Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, depending on where you're located. Welcome back to, I guess, round two of interviews with our Blue Talks Volume 7 authors. Today we have a shorter lineup than we did yesterday. Today we have three. And first we have Sandra joining us. And Sandra's in the back, so I think Heidi's going to bring her on, and then we'll just get started. Hi, Sandra. How are you?
I'm great. Beautiful day
Great
out.
to see you.
You as well.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Sorry I was a little late. I have some sick babies, so I'm just trying to deal with that. But we're on live now, so that's what matters.
That's absolutely what matters. Life sometimes gets in the way, but isn't that what this is all about?
It is, right? It definitely is. So, Sandra, I just wanted to maybe give you a few minutes just to kind of let the viewers know and learn a little bit about you and your journey, maybe how you got into business, what you're doing right now, and then after that, we'll just kind of talk about your book and the story that you put in.
Perfect. So my name is Sandra Griff. I never actually envisioned owning a business, which is really weird because I love doing what I do now. Um, and death is what brought me to it, really.
Mm.
I divorce and death. First, I got divorced and had to find myself because I had no idea who I was at 46. And that experience really opened up the world of energy for me, which brought me to a new way of living, which then brought me to my new spouse, who promptly died within a year of our relationship. So I really had to find a way to survive and regroup. And that's kind of where I ended up doing my business, was helping people regroup, helping people put their past in the past where it belongs.
That's amazing. Well, I think death and divorce actually do go hand in hand. Being someone who's been divorced as well, I mean, there's a grieving process and so many things that aren't just death, and I think that that's something that some people don't understand, right? Is any major transformation or transition we kind of go through, it can be a grieving process.
There is a grieving process for sure. And it's not just death that causes the grieving process, any kind of change, and death is change. It's
Hmm.
not, it's the end of something, but that means it's the beginning of something else. And I know there are lots of people who don't like cliches, but for every door that closes, a window opens or another door
Hmm.
opens. I really believe in that. It's all in how you choose to view it. It's your perception of it. So whether or not you want to have another window open, whether or not you're willing to see that another window has opened.
Hmm. And so, what about the chapter that you decided, the story that you decided to put in the book? Like, what was your process beside, like, behind picking, because we all in life, right, have so many life stories. So, how did you go about kind of picking that specific story?
Well, it's really funny. Every time I'm asked to write something, there are people who say, "Oh, you just recycle what you've already done." And it's like, "Oh, no." For me, everything is new. It needs to be something that's new and different. And for me, this time in this particular book, I chose to write about the echoes that we all have in our heads. It's the stories that we tell ourselves that we sometimes get stuck with. And there's one particular story which is really quick, and it's in the book, and it's well worth reading. Is the mother trying to teach her daughter how to cook this particular item, and the daughter is questioning her as to why they're doing it that way, and the mom says, I don't know why I'm doing it this way. My mother did it this way. So they go through the process of checking with the mom, and the mom says, oh, well, that's the way my mother did it. And they discover 3 generations down that there was a reason for it, which does
Hmm.
not exist today.
Hmm.
So I really talk about how we have all these stories in our heads and these thoughts that pop up, and they may not be true. So challenging your echoes, which is actually the title of my piece, is really paramount in understanding yourself and why you do things. And if
Mhm.
you understand why you do what you do, then you can choose to change it.
And I think that's so important and is asking those questions. I think it was Diane Sawyer that I saw an interview with, and it would make sense why she probably got into journalism. And she was telling a story about when she was a child, and I can't remember if it was her mother or her father, but every day at the supper table would ask her not how her day was, not what happened, but if she asked any good questions. And and I thought that was so fabulous because even as children, we're not really taught to question teachers or parents or anybody that we might see as having more knowledge. But where, like you mentioned, where did they get the knowledge? And is the knowledge right or accurate
Or valid,
or
right?
valid?
Current. Is it current?
Mhm.
Or is it something that we're doing because it was done 3 generations ago,
Mhm.
which no longer fits in life
Mhm.
today?
Yeah, it's so what, like, if somebody is starting to kind of question their beliefs or things that may they feel have been passed on, like where would you suggest they start? Like you know, just listening to those echoes, or how, like what would you suggest they might do?
First, listen to the echoes. Listen to what you're actually hearing yourself say. Sometimes when we speak things aloud, not sometimes, all of the time, when we speak things aloud,
Hmm.
they're different. They sound different than when they're running around in our head.
Hmm.
So I have thought a thought and went, oh, that's a perfectly good thought. And then I spoke it out loud and went, oh, wow, that sounded way better in my head. So really, just acknowledging that that thought exists and then checking it, fact checking it. Is it true? Is it valid? Is it
Hmm.
real? Like, is it something that's actually happening? Or is it something that might happen in the future? During COVID, and I know we're all so tired of COVID, but during COVID, people were so afraid of what was going to happen, what could happen, what might happen. If all of these things line up, then this is a possibility. Possibilities are just that,
Hmm.
possibilities. And in life, period, we all have possibilities. It's not whether or not something could happen. Anything could happen. I could walk out my door today and get struck by a bus. No
Hmm.
one is guaranteed anything, but we can't live that way. We
But
need
and that's where fear comes in, right? I mean, false
absolutely.
evidence appearing real, right? I mean, but is it really real? Or is it even really something that could happen? I mean, if I don't live in a flood, well, I'm talking about rain or whatever, because we're getting hit with a hurricane this weekend. But if I don't live in a floodplain area, um, what are my chances of experiencing flood? Or if we don't live in tornado alley, right? So, but if I'm watching the news and watching, a town being struck by a tornado, right? Like and that's, I think, where what you're somewhat talking about is like that validate, like, is it valid?
Is it valid?
Yeah.
Is it actually valid? Do I need to be concerned with it? Or is it something that I need to get rid of? Is it something
Hmm.
that I need to alter? Do I need to change my perception? Really, it's a matter of examining what it is you're thinking and then asking the questions. Is it true? Is it valid? Is it real? Can it
Hmm.
happen to me? Can it actually happen to me? I'm living in northern Alberta. The chance of me being hit by a hurricane, slim to nil. But if I watch the news, it's going to affect me because I'm an energetic being and I feel the energy of that fear that they're
Hmm.
projecting. So is it my fear I'm feeling or is it someone else's?
Ooh, I love that. Yeah. I love. And that's we were yesterday on the calls, we had spoken a lot about that. Even with my son, like, is what he's feeling, or is he picking it up from someone else? And I think that's, for sensitive, energetic souls, that is a very good question to
It
ask.
it can get really, really complicated really fast if you start delving into where did it come from. But it doesn't have to be. It can be as simple as, is that thought real? Is it
Hmm.
valid?
Hmm.
Does it actually pertain to today?
Hmm. Yeah. So when you were talking about, I just want to quickly ask you, when you were talking about recycling, and I don't have your bio in front of me. So, have you been a part of other books? Do you have a book yourself?
I have. I have
Okay.
been part of other books. Last
Okay.
year we launched Heal Volume 3,
Yeah.
and I have a story in that book as well.
Awesome. And so, what has your experience been like, being a part of a compilation book process? Like, what has that journey been like for you?
Oh, I actually think it's amazing. I think it is such a valuable asset for people who are not quite ready to put out their own books yet.
Hmm.
It gives them an avenue to really express themselves in a safe way and not in a huge way, little baby steps, right?
Hmm.
And the fact that I am now associated with all of those other people and can now not only draw upon my experiences, but theirs as well, and say, you
Hmm.
know what, don't just get this book for me, get it for all the other stories, because the stories in this book in particular, the subject matter is so vast. There's just
Hmm.
so many different types of stories. There's going to be something in there for everyone.
Yeah, when we were choosing categories, because we can, based upon, the stories that are in there, like Alec yesterday, who was on, him being a police officer. So, like, that's even a category that we can check off. But yeah, when you talk about that, when we were picking the categories, like, it was, yeah, it was a huge array. So, I can't believe, how many there is, right? And that's the nice thing is, there's a story in there for everybody.
And I think that's what really attracts me to the compilation books, is that there are so many different points of opinion.
Hmm.
I don't just want to hear one opinion. I just don't just want to hear what I think and have it verified or validated. I want to hear what other people think, because
Hmm.
that's how we learn and expand and grow. If you don't want to grow, then don't grab the book. But if you
Hmm.
want to expand your horizons and expand your thought process to see if you need to challenge some of those echoes, then this is the way to do it, by um, what's the word? Encompassing. That's not the right word, but by gravitating towards people who may have a different opinion than you, who may share information in a different way. Seeing things in a different light has made such a huge difference in my life, to break free of the patterns that we all have, which are those echoes, to break free and to recognize that not everything I believe is true.
Hmm.
In fact, most of what I believe is probably not. And I can learn from other people.
And I think that even goes back to the, the the cooking, right? The three generations,
Mhm.
because it's not just those that we learn, right? It's so many other things. Even racism, I believe, is it's taught. If a parent is a racist and the child is exposed to it, then the chances are that they're not going to question. They're just going to believe what is, passed on. So, I love that, asking those, listening to those echoes, because yeah, I mean, as children, they don't judge, right? They don't see the same things adults do. Um, and that's part of the process, is going, okay, well, maybe what this person has to say, there might be some validity to it.
Yeah, my daughter is an adult. She immigrated to the US. She married an American and now she is an American. And when she first moved to the US, she thought, wow, I grew up with such racism. And then she headed down to the deep south in the US. She was living in Seattle at the time. They headed down to the deep south. And she said, she phoned home one day and she said, Mom, she said, what I used to think was racism was actually classism. She said, it wasn't what I thought it was at all. When I came face to face with racism, it was ugly. So her belief in what it actually even was not correct until
Hmm.
she actually ran up against the real thing. And then she had to alter her opinion and say, whoa, okay, what was I thinking and why was I thinking that?
Hmm. And where did she grow up? Like you said, Alberta,
She grew up
but
in northern BC and central
okay.
Alberta.
Okay.
Yeah, first half
Yes.
of her life was northern BC and second half was central Alberta. And I
Hmm.
tried really hard to expose her to lots of things. But even now that she lives in New York now, and the stuff she's exposed herself to is nothing, or the stuff I exposed her to was nothing compared to what she's being exposed to
Hmm.
now.
Yeah. Well, especially the deep south and then New York, right? I
Right?
mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
she's
that
chosen that path of really putting herself out there and learning to be uncomfortable.
and I think that is a part of the learning process is being uncomfortable. Because that's where the lessons are. I mean, Corey talks about it all the time, right? Is stepping outside of the comfort zone. And
Mhm.
usually that's where the answers are going to be and reside for us, right? Like that could be where the truth is. But finding that is a bit uncomfortable. I mean, even for myself, and I'm sure maybe I won't share your like speak for you, but even the process of going through a divorce or thinking about it or like any of that, it's uncomfortable, like it really is. But at the end of the day, you had talked about that, the doors open and then there's a blessing on the other side. So even with recovery, the choice to look at recovery and go, okay, and this is uncomfortable, but I know that it's going to be worth it.
Right? If I had not gotten divorced, I would not be where I am now. Guaranteed.
Hmm.
Guaranteed. And where I am now, while it's not perfect, it's pretty fabulous.
Hmm.
I mean, there's always room for improvement. I was talking to a friend yesterday who said, oh my God, she said, I am so tired. She said, I get the making money thing is great. And I don't even know how much money I have now. I just keep putting the checks in the bank. She said,
Hmm.
but money does not buy happiness. It has to be balance.
Well, I mean, and we can look at how many celebrities who've taken their lives, right? Robin Williams, like there's
Right?
like the list goes on,
Yeah,
right?
no, it's not, life is not about what we gather. Life is about what we experience.
Hmm.
And it's not about the stuff. And that doesn't mean you don't need money. You do. You need money to survive in the world we have created. But one of the joys of our life is that we get to create the life we want. We're actually creating the life we had. And for me, that was one of my biggest turning points when one of my instructors said, you are 100% responsible for the life you have. And I said, whoa, hang on. What are you talking about? I didn't ask for my husband to be a jerk. I didn't ask for my father to be an alcoholic. I didn't ask to be raised by someone who was too young to be having children. I mean, my mom was a teen mom and she did her best, and I don't begrudge her that at all. I know she did her best, but there were things that were missed. So it's the 100, once I recognized that I had actually contributed to my life and the place I was at in a big way. And
Hmm.
mostly in my case, I contributed by not making choices,
Hmm.
by not making decisions, by not stepping up and being uncomfortable.
Hmm.
As soon as I recognized that and started taking those steps, wow, my life changed hugely.
I can relate to that a lot. I'm shaking my head like crazy because when we moved back here years ago, Corey had gone to see a local medium in our hometown, and she foresaw us meeting and our relationship evolving and some other things. And I remember the first time because Corey's like, "You have to go see her," and I remember the first time I sat down with her, and she looked at me and she was like, "Wow." You have you have let a lot of people abuse you. And I was mad. I was like, let? What do you mean? And then it took, a little while. And then like, exactly like you said, I was like, wow, yeah, like I let it happen by not choosing to leave. I
Mhm.
prolonged, even in recovery, that's part of our responsibility is to look at our resentments and see our own part in it. And so that was part of my process too was, um, but I think when we're living in, um, denial, I guess that you could say, or,
Victimhood.
not wanting to look at our own shadow, it's easy to project it onto everybody else.
It is. It really is. It was so easy to blame someone else. But once
Hmm.
I took responsibility, like my life shifted, did a 180. It was amazing to watch. Uh,
Hmm.
and I just can't stress that enough that once people take responsibility, personal responsibility for their own actions, no matter what they are, right? If I decide to do nothing one day and I'm okay with that, then it's an okay day,
Hmm.
right? It's okay that I did nothing.
Hmm.
But if you're not liking where you are the only one who has the power to change it.
Yeah. Um, I I agree 100%. But it's actually kind of crazy that that we're talking about this because um, I've been thinking a lot about the choices when we're in addiction and when we're having mental health issues. And I remember my mom suffered a lot with mental health problems, and I remember even at that time. She had gone through a lot of therapies. Like at the end, it was even electric shock treatment. And so, being the daughter, I kept saying, like, well, or yeah, I'm happy with my dad, or what about this, or change that. And I've been thinking a lot about that in the sense that, you know, maybe there was more to it, right? Like than just changing something. And that's like addiction. We always talk about people who, well, I can't believe they've lost their children or they've lost their home. But, I just want to, if anyone is listening and I'll get your thoughts on it. But sometimes when there's crises like that, the choices are, um, I'll just say maybe sometimes out of our control.
Yes.
Because well, I guess the choice is taken away because that's is the powerless of maybe the mental health or the addiction is taken over. Um, so, but for anybody who is listening, who is like, not suffering from that, then um, I 100% agree. But what are your thoughts on what I just said, though, as far as those? Because I am curious because this is something that's been on my mind a lot lately.
So there are always exceptions to the rule.
Hmm.
Always. I don't care what the rule is. There's always an exception. And when you're talking about illness, that's another whole can of worms,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And mental illness and addiction are illnesses. So when you're talking about an illness, until you get the illness under control, then you can't very well take control for all of your actions. And
Ah.
sometimes it is difficult. It's, you know what, not sometimes, it's always difficult. It's easy for me to sit here and say, oh yeah, I took responsibility and it changed my life. Well, that sounds like it was easy. It wasn't.
Hmm.
It wasn't easy.
Hmm.
And it's going to be a struggle and it's going to be difficult. That's why I have a job.
Hmm.
Is because people need other people to help them through this.
Hmm.
And lots of people can't do it by themselves.
Hmm.
And that's what illness and addiction are. You can't do it by yourself. You need help and support from an amazing community.
Hmm.
But it is up to you in both cases, whether it's mental illness or addiction, to reach out for that help.
Hmm. Thank you so much. And may I quote you what you said about getting the illness under control and then, and then the choices can be made? Because I love that. And that just definitely puts it into perspective. So, um, yeah, like I said, it's been something that's been on my mind, and I've been trying to figure out how to phrase it, and that's perfect the way you just said it. So,
Yeah, and the other thing
yeah.
is not everybody is following an identical path.
Hmm.
So what my experience was is not going to be your experience.
Hmm.
Now, there may be some parallels in it, but it's not going to be identical. So
Hmm.
we do actually have to honor where that person is and where they're coming from as to how difficult their journey is going to be. And whether I think my journey was difficult or not, other people look at me and said, "Oh, you made it look so easy." Well, just because I made it look easy doesn't mean it was easy.
Hmm.
Right? It's pretty easy to stand on the outside and look in and say, "Oh, you know what? You should be doing this." We all
Yeah.
have to honor ourselves.
Lots of people can be showing projecting something and drowning on the inside, and that and even what you said about everyone takes a different path at everything. We all have different thumbprints, right? We all have different DNA, so I mean that goes to it. And I think if we look at it, everybody from with a sense of compassion, even with even in abuse, right? Like we could know somebody who's in an abusive relationship, but all we can do is be compassionate and be there to support. But until they make that choice, it's not something that we can force upon anybody.
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all about personal choices.
Hmm.
Once you make that personal choice and reach out for help, there's all kinds of help available. And sometimes you need to wait for the right help.
Yeah. That's amazing. Well, and I haven't done it, but I will yesterday and today's too. With it being Suicide Awareness Month and Addiction Awareness Month, and what I'll do is on yesterday's and today's feed, I'll put in some hotline numbers there too. And Sandra, how can people get in contact with you if they want to reach out to you yourself?
My company is Ever Changing Life, and I'm located in Canada. So it's
Hmm.
www.everchanginglife.ca. And you can reach me through my website.
Awesome. Thank you, Sandra, so much for being here and taking the time to be with us and to share some of your journey in life.
And since we're talking about the book,
Hmm.
when
Yeah,
the
for
book
sure.
when you actually get the book in hand, there's information on how to reach me in there as well.
Awesome. Great. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Sandra. Have a great day.
Thank you, Shelly.
Okay. Take care.
Bye.
Bye bye. Okay. And we have Michelle coming up next. Mommy. Hi, Michelle. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for being here today.
Thanks for having me. This is
Yeah.
exciting. The book is exciting.
It really is. Is this your first book process?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
Yeah,
awesome. Okay, well, before we jump into that, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, Michelle?
sure. Well, my name is Michelle Hurlbert, as you can very
Hmm.
distinctly see at the bottom of the screen.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm live in Nova Scotia, Canada. I'm an educator and a coach at a company that I started in 2021 called 3D Life Inc. I am an educator by trade. However, resigned from my position in March 2021 to go full time in my education and coaching company. And I work with leaders, titled and untitled, in organizations or in business around how they show up in their business or in the work that they're doing or with their teams, how important it is that they're aware of and taken care of themselves within their leadership so that
Hmm.
they can make a difference and can be more effective and more valued and inspired in the work that they do with the people that they do it with and for.
Hmm. So what were you? So what type of work were you doing that you had left to go out on your own?
So I've been in education off and on, I guess, for the last 25-ish years.
Oh wow.
I've had about 20 years of education experience. I worked overseas
Hmm.
in Asia for 8 years. I came back to Canada and started working in 2006 in the public education system.
Hmm.
And the last 5 years of my career in education, I worked as a social and emotional learning coach. So I was really focused on helping educators at the elementary school level in particular implement a social emotional learning program and helping to teach students and to develop skills around problem solving, emotional awareness and vocabulary, getting along with others, building and managing.
Put in more than one. Are you one of the ones who you're a part of a different volume as well? I can't remember.
I'm in volume 1, 6, 7. I can't remember if I'm in 5 too.
Okay. So we have a
I'm
few.
in a few.
Okay.
Yes.
So now what about this? What about this story that you've included for this volume, for volume 7? So how did you kind of, obviously you've put in a few other stories, but how did you choose this one as something of importance that you want to share?
Sure. So with this one, I really touched on the importance of our most valuable assets. And so many of us are just busy, beyond busy, like you had mentioned before. But when you're looking at your most valuable asset, we look at, the basic needs that we have, services we use, your environment, social connections, or well-being, but we don't always think about our brain health, and it's
Mm,
usually always on the back burner, and especially when it comes to within your family, not just yourself, within your family. And it's important to make those small connections with your family members before brain health becomes an area which interrupts the ability for communication. So, for example, if you have a parent who's a senior, you want to get as much communication with them before they lose their cognitive ability to have that ability to communicate with you, or when you feel that you wish you would have, could have, should have.
And does this come from personal experience, like something you're experiencing with your aging parents?
Yes, with my aging parents. Also, I've worked in geriatric and palliative care for over 25 years. So I also see this daily with people who really, haven't seen their parent for a long time until there's a time when they come in at the hospital crisis and then don't realize how far that they may have slipped. And the
Hmm.
things that, the busyness of life has pulled them away from making those connections and those bonds and those love moments and important conversations that needed to happen that sometimes they weren't able to do so.
And so, what somebody who possibly has an aging parent who hasn't gotten to the point of, being in palliative care, or maybe, um, you know, have lost or losing their brain health, like what would your advice be to that person?
Well, I always like to say to them, you want to utilize as many different opportunities to open the connection of memories. And one of the best ways to do that is to look at the connection with music. So when you think of you and
Mm,
Corey, for example, you and Corey may have a favorite song that means something special to the two of you. And it's the same with all our family members. What was the song that they had when they were married, or the song that your dad danced with you to, or what have you? Music is very important, and a connection that isn't always affected as they go through the dementia stage or in the later points, and it'll bring that connection back. And it's a one that I always say, put a list of a collection of music together so that they can make that link.
hmm. And like, I don't know where maybe I even saw it in a movie, but I or read it somewhere maybe, but I had seen it somewhere that this being done, and the song comes on and it is somebody with dementia, and has no memory of anything. But then all of a sudden that song comes on, and like I said, I can't recall if it was a movie or if it was a study that I watched or something. But you could just see, and then it just created this whole flood of memories.
Yeah, and then they'll all start singing along every word and know every word and be there. And it's a wonderful experience in the geriatric world to be there for that.
Hmm.
And and also for me, it helps to really look at where we are in our own life journey and the importance of all of the domains of life and the mental areas of that, and to be aware of that, where it looks at the basic needs of food, housing, and clothing type of thing, and the changes that we're all experiencing in the financial end, to the services and supports for quality of life within your community, your emergency services, health, and all that type of thing that is around, that you really need that stuff as well. Cultural and language issues, your environments, and whether that be digitally, physically, getting out and know your neighbor, step out there and go and meet them. And so many people don't take advantage of that social connection and relationship with people around you, not only for inclusion and allowing people to be included, as well as support for each other, and really choosing to be that person in your own community who is building that well-being and creating conditions for everyone within your neighborhood to really flourish, and get to know that senior that's there. And one second, the construction workers have a question. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Yes.
Hello.
Hi.
We were just speaking about the power. If you can get power in the
Um,
garage.
yes, you can get power in the garage. You should be able to.
I'm looking it up right now. Yeah, we'll try.
Try on the other outlet outside, or otherwise I'll have to bring another one for you.
Yeah, we'll try this.
So just so the audience
Okay.
knows, this was a very last minute decision for me to put this event on. It was just earlier this week, so that we decided to host this event. So Katrina, thank you for being here, and
I'm so sorry.
no,
I'm
it's
so
all
sorry,
good.
guys. I'm trying to deal with the construction workers' needs as well. So right afterwards here, I'm
It's
gonna have
all
to go get
good.
some electrical
It's
stuff dealt with
it's
for
it's
them.
a part of multitasking, and it's like you said, it's keeping your brain healthy, right?
Yeah, and really, like I said, looking also at our life, our not only our well-being for ourselves and our physical health, our emotional health, and really finding that purpose in life
Mhm,
for what you want and your hope, as well as looking at that life development and the age changes and the brain development at through your education, your age, your family formation, retirement planning, and livelihood of what do you want for your income, and do you have a purpose for not only your volunteer work and meaningful contributions to the community that you can make, not only in your local community and further around, how you can put that drop into the wave,
mhm.
to make that.
And has this always been something that's been a passion for you, like community and the
Yeah,
giving
I would
back?
say
And
I would really say so. My husband used to say I had a permanent V on my forehead for volunteering in almost everything, until I kind of reined that in and sort of said, okay, I just want to volunteer in these specific areas, because I would be,
mhm,
like when my kids were young, they're in their 30s now, but when they were young, I was, you know, doing all the things in the schools and and all their activities for extracurricular and what have you. But it was just something I really loved doing, because I knew what it was like to be someone who really needed support, whether that be due to mental health and depression areas, whether that be to my medical conditions,
mhm,
and really being grateful when people were there to step in when I really needed that. And so, that could be all kinds of services, from even just offering a ride to someone who doesn't drive to go get groceries or something like that.
and I it's funny that the conversation has gone down this, and like you had said, checking on the neighbors or meeting your neighbors, and I had mentioned earlier, like Hurricane Fiona is supposed to hit us, and so I listen to CBC radio on all the time, and so on my way down here for the interviews, that was one of the things that they had said is, like, you know, if you don't know your neighbors, but the storm does hit, maybe check on them, and check on each other, and just to make sure that, everybody is okay. Because um, I'm curious, like, do you think that like fear has played a factor in us not knowing our neighbors, or like busyness, like what I mean, obviously things have changed,
Oh,
the
absolutely. When I think
or
when I was a young kid in the early 70s, and that's, we knew everybody. Everyone was out in the
Mhm,
neighborhood, collecting
mhm,
salamanders or
mhm,
whatever,
exactly.
having fun
Yep,
out there.
yep, making
And
mud
you just
pies.
ran around. You would run from one house to the other. We'd, have lunch in someone else's house. It was no big deal. Today is very, very different. And
Hmm.
not only for the security aspects, but also I'm going to say the busyness of our demands on life is pulling us. It was for me as well when I would be working continuously, lots of hours, and those special, warm fuzzy moments that you would have with the family immediately, or even with your neighbors, just didn't fit in the schedule.
Yeah.
And sometimes that was snowballing and overtaking to the point when you would be only showing up for the once a year get together with the neighborhood, rather than really touching base on the people that needed assistance throughout the year right beside you.
Hmm. Yeah, well, and I think that's even for me in my own personal life, like um, going back to work in February of this year, and after being at home with the kids and stuff, and just kind of going all in, right? Like diving into the deep end. I kind of dubbed this, self care September, because I really had to look within me, and see all the places that I'm saying yes to, because then there's all these other places that all, that all these other places that I'm saying no to. Corey talks
Yeah,
about that a lot, of the yeses and the
yeah.
nos,
And every
and it
yes
is
is a no
hard.
to something else.
Yeah, and it's hard to say no, right?
Mhm.
But sometimes we need to, because there's other things that we need to start saying yes to.
Absolutely. And I mean, I find the same thing for myself because, working in the front lines of COVID over the last couple of years, as well as even today with the pressures on the front lines in the geriatric and palliative environment, is not always healthy for those of us that are working in that area.
Hmm.
And it's hard to many times pull that back in and say, do that check to say, is this affecting me today? And many times we need to do that. And
Hmm.
it's important, and especially when we're looking at the stresses that come, and as stresses increase, sometimes your own uh, mental health, or even medical condition thresholds begin to fall, as you're not really taking care of yourself and making yourself more vulnerable for more complications to really step on yourself.
Hmm. Yeah, and so throughout your journey, like, have you had a lot of ups and downs, like, um,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. So, for me, for example, when we look at every stage of my life has had turmoil and crisis that I've had to overcome, and then put those tools in my toolbox.
Mhm.
For example, as a young child, my parents were married and divorced multiple times with extreme traumas in all cases, and removed by police protection, put into the foster care system, which was not always good either.
Mhm.
Eventually, as a older adult in high school, always having complications because of my brain health issues, with not only epilepsy, frontal lobe division scarring, and a brain tumor on my brainstem. I had a lot of not only self confidence that was lacking. The flight or flight was basically my lifestyle,
Mhm.
and a lot of that really impacted the choices that I made or believed about myself because of what people had told me. But I
Mhm.
eventually got to the point where it was like, because I still wasn't able to read in high school and had to learn to read. But eventually I got to the point where, everyone was saying all the things you can't do because of all these conditions, but want to bet, watch me. And,
Yeah. And that's
and
and that's the
choose to
bad
rise
thing about
above.
labels.
It
And
really, really
yeah,
is. And,
is
and
they
when I
put
worked
those
also,
limitations.
absolutely. And working in the disability sector as well, I really find that people sometimes, whether they're being first diagnosed or later in life, when a specific impact of that health condition rises to the surface and bubbles up, that many times that will bring on levels of depression, whether
Mhm.
that be, let's say if it's epilepsy for more seizures or different complications as well, that we really have to sit back and say, I am not my condition.
Mhm.
I am so much more, and to rise above that. And that's where I love coaching and really bringing everyone who has those different neurological complications to really say, you know what, before you look at your condition, you're an amazing person down below. And let's let that part come out. And
It, that's amazing, and it's so important, right? And I love that
it,
you start with that.
well, and to find your purpose, you yes, you are this or that condition or label or whatever, but so what? You still have a purpose for why you're here, and to be
Mhm.
able to find that purpose and your meaningful contributions that you can make within the community to create that positive ripple that every person has the ability to really contribute. And that's what I love to help people find.
And I know that you've been, being a voice for quite a few years. But when did you find that voice to be a voice for others? Like how, like, has it always been there, or like I know you said, in high school you kind of
Yes. So
struggle with self confidence, but like when did that become part? Like, I mean, you're head of some of the boards, and you're on these boards, and you are a voice, right? Um,
yes.
where did that
Um, I,
come
I would
from?
I would say it really started building that self-confidence when I was in the foster home system as a teenager,
Hmm.
and being with so many levels of abusive background where I was always protecting my younger sibling and being that sort of parent as a kid. and,
Okay.
and then and then in the foster system, when people would really come extremely broken and just been removed from their homes, and I would be there to say, you know what, it's going to be okay. Let's
Mm,
look at the good things that are here for you, and let me be that person that you can connect with. And then even later in life as an adult, my husband and I were in the military overseas. There were a lot of spouses overseas that were just emotionally broken from being away from Canada for 5 years or more in an isolated area. And sometimes you just need that, warm, fuzzy support from other people around you as well.
mhm,
And I've always been that, and being in the military, where we continually were uprooting and moving to new communities, whether it was when I was a kid or later in life, it's having to make those connections and jump into this community and find out what this community has to offer, and where do I fit into this new community. And I would always do that. It's like, okay, what nonprofits are in this community? How do I volunteer to meet people in this community? Where's the church that we wish to belong to in this community?
mhm,
And really finding all those things that are in each community, and choosing to say, okay, let's become a part of it.
mhm. And then, so somebody who is as busy as yourself, like, where does your own self care come into that?
Very much so. So what I do is, when I look at my monthly schedule, um, because of not taking care of myself in busyness, where I had offices downtown and
Hmm.
rushing my kids around years ago, and when you don't take care of yourself, I hit many brick walls because of that, and learned hard lessons from that.
Hmm.
So now when I open up my day timer, there are um, very important appointments that go in before anything else. First, where's the time for my husband and I to have our relationship? That needs to be on there. Where's the time for myself to take time for me? And I take advantage of one of the great retreat centers in our community, where I book myself in each month to
Nice.
take, even if it's a day or a weekend, just to say, you know what, I need that time for me. And put all those different things for you, and a date for you and your child to go and do different things, and the parts that you need with the family to be able to do that. And there are many times where things are going to change. For example, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago there, I was, over in BC because I had to go to be with my dad. And, different times you're going to have things that will pivot the schedule. But it's being um, able to say, you know what, even though this is here right now, I'm willing to allow it to pivot.
That's amazing, and thank you for that. I going to take some of that advice myself, and I think that like I said, thank you for sharing that, because I think you mentioned it earlier too, like the busyness, right? Like it's so easy for us to get busy, and busyness is part of being distracted, right?
Well, and especially in geriatrics, we would have people that show up and then they say, what did you do to my mom? And I would say, well, when was the last time you saw her? Well, 15 years ago. Well, now that she's 97, things have changed. you know, you know,
I don't mean
and
to
people will
laugh, but
people
nobody
will
stays the
fly from
same after
across
15 years.
because family members will fly from long distance to come and settle things up, and
Mhm,
are kind of like shocked, what happened to them. Well, deterioration is there, and then sometimes we need to realize that not only when you're seeing your own family members that are aging, so are we. The same
mhm.
way when you look at your children that are growing really fast and
Yeah,
aging really fast, well, as they're aging, so are we, and we need to take care of all those special moments for the whole family.
yeah. Well, and I don't know if you agree with this or not, but I said this to Corey. We saw Steve Earle actually when we were in Alberta, in Edmonton, at the River Cree, and I don't know how old he is, but the guy put on a great show, and he just he's probably late 60s, 70s maybe, and he just has this look and that swagger and everything about him, and I looked at Corey and I was like, you don't change, you just get old,
Mhm.
because and I don't know what it was about that trip, but like there was another gentleman in at the hotel we were staying at, and and he was like probably 80, and he looked like a biker, and he had the long gray hair, and well, like he was on a bike, so he was a biker, but to me, like I could see, it was almost like I could see inside to that 20-year-old kid
Yeah,
personality, and
the
now he's
energy deeply.
80, and yeah, like, but it was like he's he just got old,
Yeah,
he's
and my husband and I've had many situations similar to that. Like one singer he loved, and we saw him all over the world as well, was BB King. And my
okay, yeah,
husband was like in love with BB King. And
he's
we saw
awesome.
one of his, last shows that he did, as he's being carried onto the stage with his wheelchair and what have you. But it's even though we're at those stages, the love for what you do, the passion for saying
Mhm,
this is where I'm meant to be, to really embrace that no matter where you are, and also allowing yourself to age without regret to happen, because you've chose to really embrace the positive things in life rather than letting society's demands
mhm.
overtake. And sometimes, and I was very guilty of that, working 17, 18-hour days all the time, and not allowing time for what was really truly important, more so than just make more money.
Well, and I think part of finding the purpose, or like you're talking, the passion, the purpose, is also the authentic self, right? Is like, because I think we expand into that, loving ourselves when we have that too, right? And maybe that's part of it, even with BB King and the gentlemen that I saw, it almost like they emanate that they are comfortable with what they are and who they are, and it just
Mhm.
emanates from them, right? And I think
Mhm,
that's
mhm.
so important, especially in a world of media and social media and all this other stuff, right? Like it's so easy to fall into that, oh, I want to be like her, or oh, I want to look like her, or oh, I want to be like him, or I want to have as many followings as him, and do. It's so easy to fall into that trap, right? Um,
Yeah, and
But
I would say also that to find resources that are around you, that when you feel, because whether you like it or not, everybody's going to have ups and downs
mhm,
and along your journey,
yeah.
and be okay with when those downs hit, to be able to say, you know what, I'm meant to be down right now. I need to allow myself to respect this, but then put the resources in to just say, okay, now let's get back up.
Mhm. Yeah, I've fallen off the boat, but, there's a lifeboat over there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, so, rather than just lay here, I'm gonna get on the lifeboat and see what's on there for me and in store, and eventually, maybe I'll get back on that cruise ship over there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And for so many people, they feel like, I can't get from A to B because that's right across the Atlantic and I can't swim all the way over there.
mhm,
Well, you know what? It's about having those people that have the boats to say, you know what, we will take you from one attainable step to the next attainable step. And I love being there to be able to provide those tools for people to just say, you know what, it's just one attainable step that you need to do right now.
awesome. Well, Katrina, this has been amazing. It's so nice to see your face, and I was so grateful to see you in Edmonton. And, yeah, it's just, I love what you're doing and the message that you're sharing, and there and being a voice, for sometimes in some cases the voiceless, right? So,
Absolutely, and especially with all the challenges today that are out there that everyone is feeling. And
mhm,
for the seniors that are there, or the people living with disabilities across Canada, many of these challenges just become more more I want to say impactful on their lives, and that's where we all can create that positive ripple for them as well.
mhm. Well, thank you so much. And so, Katrina, if anybody wants to reach out to you, obviously they can read your story in Volume 7. For we're doing pre-sales right now, as well as there's the other authors that we've had on the last couple of days, and then we also have some other tremendous authors. So, what I'll do is I can put out a list of all the other authors. But for yourself, if how can somebody reach out to you or learn more?
So you can reach out to me at healthybrain.ca,
Hmm.
or also at, you can just give me a call. The information will be in the book there for the Blue Talks #7 book, as well as the
Awesome.
others. But feel free to reach out. I love to, be there to be that listening ear that many times we need, whether we are in the highs or in the lows, and embracing each other's journey and walk
Awesome.
alongside each other.
Well, thank you so much, Katrina. I really,
You
really,
too,
really do
Shelley.
appreciate it. And I hope your construction goes smoothly.
Yeah,
And
I'm
I'm
gonna
sure
head back
we,
out there to help them.
yeah, okay. Well, I'm sure we will be touching base very soon. You have a great
Okay,
day. Okay,
so
take care,
much. Take care.
Katrina.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Okay, everyone. So we got some news earlier in the week. We lost a loved and treasured Blue Talks family member earlier in the week. And so we just wanted to acknowledge Chris Ferguson and the amazing things that she did. She has a podcast, and we'll put the link down below. There's actually quite a few members of our Blue Talks community who have been on her podcast. So maybe we'll put some of those links up, or if anybody who's listening wants to add their own link. We just want to get some more, keep her legacy alive and keep her message alive. So Chris, I believe, was married to Jan Ferguson. Um, so Jan and family, we're very sorry about your loss, and we're just going to put up a slide, and just have a couple of moments of silence to end the broadcast. So thank you all for joining in today.